and welcome back to the homestead. It is that time of year to start thinking about getting chicks for your homestead. There are so many different options for brooder boxes. They can be very expensive, but today I'm going to show you some budget-friendly options because if you're trying to save money on growing your own eggs and getting your own chicks, you don't want to spend a ton of money. This is the third year that we've done chicks in this setup, and so I thought I would share it with you because it is super cheap, easy, and simple. The first thing you're going to need is obviously a brooder box, something to keep your chicks in. This here is a container that I just got from Walmart. It is a Rubbermaid brand. I'm not sure how big it is, but it is quite large. It can comfortably fit 6, 7, 8 chickens. As they get older, they might get a little bit more crowded in here, but it's definitely a budget-friendly option. I think I spent only around $8 to $10 for this box here. Now notice I don't have a lid on it. That's because I've got the heat lamp in here. They're not really old enough to hop out yet. As they get older, they like to roost up on the sides here. Sometimes they do end up getting out, but this is in our half bath downstairs, so I do hear them when they start peeping because they let me know when they hop out and I can just put them in. There's not really anywhere for them to go. So if you do have an area like that, you might want to put a lid on here if you don't want them to get out and get into things, but that's usually when they're several weeks old. Like I said, this is a great size to get started with these chicks. As they get older and temperatures get warmer, you can bring them outside during the day and then bring them in here at night. This will get pretty crowded as they get older, reaching that 6-week range. So if they're only in here at night, it's not that big of a deal. But as they're smaller and getting older, those first several weeks, this will be plenty big enough. I did, however, keep the top for this. I cut out the inside and I put some bird netting on that. We actually took our last batch of chicks to Texas with us when we were traveling and they were too little to go outside. So I had the lid on there. They didn't need the heat lamp at the time, but I did have the lid on there and it kept them in. So you definitely can have an option. Just if you had a heat lamp, make sure you have safety in mind and keep an eye on that. So what you're going to want to put inside here, you can do newspaper, you can do pine shavings. I like to use these wood pellets. They are almost mess-free and they're so easy to deal with. They're super cheap. If you get the little pine shavings, they can always end up in their water and it's such a mess. You're constantly cleaning out their water. But these wood pellets, as they get wet, they just kind of break down and expand. And then usually weekly, as they get older, I do it a little bit more often, but weekly, I clean out this bin, I go dump it in the compost and I put another couple inches of the pellets on the bottom and this works out really well. Next, you're gonna need a heat source. Now, when the chicks are little, obviously they need a heat source. And as they get older, the temperatures can get cooler and cooler as they get their feathers in and get larger. I have this heat lamp here. Again, make sure you are watching this so you have safety in mind because you can melt your bin, you can injure your chicks if you're not paying attention. But we just made this little wooden scrap thing to hold our heat lamp. We have it screwed on here, and each week you want to decrease the temperature by 5 degrees as they get older until they're, I can't remember what age, it's a couple weeks, several weeks old, till they start getting feathered and they don't need as much heat. Now, how you know if they're getting too much or too little heat in the beginning is if they're constantly huddled underneath your heat lamp, then you know that it's not warm enough for them. You can get a thermometer that you can check the temperature. I think it's supposed to be around like 95 to 100 degrees. But if your chicks are constantly spread out to the sides and not underneath the heat source, then you know that it's too hot and you need to raise it up. But if they're comfortably under here, going in and out to eat and not acting like they're huddling together or trying to get away from the heat, then you know it's the perfect temperature. But like I said, each week you want to raise that up so that way they don't need that heat, that hot temperature anymore. I have seen heat plates that they can be under, but those, they kind of mimic the mama hen, kind of a cool idea. But I don't like those because one, they're pricey, and two, the chicks are all under there and then you can't see them. They do pop out every once in a while, but if you're trying to stay budget friendly, then a heat lamp done safely is probably going to be your cheapest option. We've had this heat lamp for several years and we keep an eye on it and we haven't really had any issues. Next, you'll obviously need a food and water container. I just got these containers from our local feed store for just a few dollars. I like having this area in our half bath because we have a water source and a drain source here. I can easily clean out their water and refill it. We can also wash our hands after handling the chicks. So I was gonna do a basement setup, but we didn't have anything like that down there. So I didn't really wanna do that, but I like having them in the half bath because they're very close to where we are and I can check on them frequently. You'll also need some chick starter. Obviously, I don't add chick grit to mine. I think my chick starter already has it in there, so you might want to double check and see if yours has it in there. They also have options for probiotics and electrolyte drinks. I don't buy any of that. I did at first, but it's kind of pricey and you have to mix up the whole container and use it up within so much time. It was more of a hassle than it's worth. When my feed store gets in the chicks, they let them settle in, they give them electrolytes in their water for a few hours, and then they go ahead and let you take them home. So they have already had a good start on electrolytes after their long travel journey to the feed store. So I don't really find it's necessary, but that's something you can look into to see if you want to deal with that. If you want to give your chicks electrolytes, that's another option, but that's obviously an additional cost. You can make your own. I haven't done that. Maybe sometime I will, but I just give my chicks water and the chick starter, and they seem to do fine with that. So that's all there is to this easy brooder box setup. It's super simple. Don't overthink it. Keep an eye on your chicks. Obviously, if they're lethargic, you want to make sure that you're getting them some electrolytes and a little dropper. Make sure you're keeping an eye on them, but they're really pretty much low maintenance as long as you're monitoring them to make sure their temperature's okay and everything is fine. It's such a super easy, budget-friendly setup. That's all there is to it. Let me know what you guys have for options for your brooder box. If you get real fancy or if you're cheap like me, this totally works. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.